Are the Rams a better team this year than they were last year, even with Aaron Donald retiring and the Rams officially signed Tre-Davious White? That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, and let us know down below. Do you think the Rams are better now this time around with their current roster than they were this time last year, even without Aaron Donald in the mix? My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 Sports, SI, Dodgers Nation. And as always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He just finished his 8th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the people's champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, are the Rams better now than they were this time last year, even without Aaron Donald? The Rams officially signed Tre-Davious White. And will the Rams break this current draft streak that they currently lead the league in? That's coming up next. But first, this episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Okay, Travis. So it's a Rams fan site. They ran a poll, Turf Show Times, that asked their fans, are the Rams better now than they were this time last year? And 68% of Rams fans believe they're better now this year than they were last year, even with Aaron Donald retiring. And I know that some Rams fans might have a problem with that statement because Aaron Donald is a legend. Even though he has already peaked and his best years are behind him, he's still a top 3 defensive tackle at that position. But when you look at it, the additions, you got guard Jonah Jackson, you have tight end Kobe Parkinson. He's going to improve the blocking. You got cornerbacks Darius Williams, Tre-Davious White. You got safety Cameron Curl. You got quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo. They have solidified the secondary. They rebuilt the secondary. You have solidified the offensive line. I am in team, yes, this team from a top to bottom roster standpoint, where last year a lot of replacement level players, this roster is better now this year, even without Aaron Donald, than they were last year.
I think that the question in and of itself is a reflection on just how good Aaron Donald actually was, because only the removal of a player like Aaron Donald could even make this a question that you'd have to stop and think about.
Good point.
Right? That if the Rams had added what they added last season, and think about all the players that you just mentioned that they've signed, all the rebuilt secondary, the trades that they've made, the free agent acquisitions that they made, all of those things. But what this team also has, if we're talking about a year ago today, what this team didn't have, they didn't have Puka Nacua. They didn't have Kobe Turner. You didn't have Byron Young. You didn't have the understanding, the knowledge that Kyren Williams was a high-level NFL running back. You didn't have these were all either question marks or hopefuls. Well, now you've got a little bit of data to back this up, and all of the things that you just talked about as far as being added on the defensive side of the ball. The fact that you've added or discovered 10, 12 really good NFL players and one left, and we're asking, are you better? That's how good Aaron Donald was. That's how dominant he was. And I'm not entirely sure that I agree with, what would you say, 68% of the people that went that way. I tend, maybe I'm leaning a little bit that way. I need to see what everybody on that other side of the ball looks like without number 99. I was talking with DeMarco Farr yesterday, who has, been with the Rams forever and ever, Super Bowl champion with them. And we were talking on my radio show, and John Ireland, the voice of the Lakers, asked him, how many of Kobe Turner's sacks, because Kobe Turner sang the national anthem at the Laker game last night, were directly attributable to the fact that Aaron Donald was getting attention. And DeMarco said, well, how many do you have? And I said, well, he had 9. He goes, then it's 9. Okay, that's what Aaron Donald does. That he was talking that Jason Kelsey was talking on his podcast with his brother Travis about in his career in the NFL. Again, a Hall of Fame NFL career in Jason Kelsey. The only player that they ever went up against where they game planned for one person on the other side of the ball was the Rams and Aaron Donald. That the entire game plan was deal with Aaron Donald. This is what we're talking about. Yes, I think that the Rams have a lot more talent in a lot more places. But when you remove a 10 out of 10 and you replace it with a bunch of 6s and 7s, I don't know. I think they'll be better. I'm feeling better about the team collectively, but that's how good Aaron Donald was.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. Is it really more of a testament to his greatness, the fact that this is even a conversation based on how this roster looked last year when they spent absolutely no money, right? You're basically drafting guys and it looked like you were setting up the roster for a complete rebuild. People talking about tanking this time last year, but then you look at it and say, oh, wait a minute. 68% think that you lose the best defensive tackle in NFL history, a guy that still is putting up top 3 level production, and you're better. How is that even possible? Well, look, I think the fact that Aaron Donald, as good as he was, and by the way, someone points out, no one loves Aaron. Maybe his friends and family love him more than me, but even that, I'd make the case. Like, it's probably equal, right? No one loves Aaron Donald more than I do. I love this guy.
Right.
But even then, it's like you're not going to get the super duper top level Zenith Prime version of Aaron Donald. You're still going to get elite, but not the best version of Aaron Donald, right? So still a guy that's going to attract double and triple teams, still be tops in the league in PFF grades and things like that. But when you factor in the experience that now that first year of rookies got with Steve Avila, with Kobe Turner, like you mentioned. We have Kyron Williams coming back, solidify himself as the feature running back to start there. You don't have that question, right? I mean, we're going to the year with Cam Akers last year, hoping, oh, can he do it, when we knew that he probably couldn't, right? I just think when you look at the experience, you look at a completely rebuilt secondary. You're not talking about guys like Darian Kendrick and Kobe Durant's kind of taking a step back, and you had a Kella Witherspoon who definitely had a nice year, but there's more veterans. There's just more talent top to bottom on this year's team, and you haven't even addressed the defensive side of the ball as far as an edge rusher in the draft. I think that, to me, would put this argument over the top, is if you could really get that edge rusher. Do you end up with a Liatu Latu, right? Do you get a Chop Robinson? Some of you say, okay, maybe that edge rusher is here, and still even there, an unknown, but I still like what they do with this roster compared to last year and where they're at.
I do too, but there's one other thing about Aaron Donald that I think that has to be factored into this. And let's go back to the Super Bowl. Let's go back to the Super Bowl that they won at SoFi Stadium against the Bengals. And they, we've all seen the video. We've all heard the audio of Sean McVay calling the shot. He goes, this is where Aaron Donald makes a play. What happened? Aaron Donald made a play and won the Super Bowl. Not only was Aaron Donald a great player down in and down out, not only was he a great player for all 10 years that he was in the league, when you had to have it, he was one of those guys. Like he wasn't one of those guys that, look at the season. No. He's the guy that gets the hit in the 7th game of the World Series. He's the guy that comes out of the bullpen and strikes a guy out. He's the guy that knocks down the open jumper with 2 seconds left in the game to send you on to the next round. It's not just that he's good. He's the best when he has to be the best. That's a whole nother level. Yeah. Can another guy get a bunch of sacks? Well, sure. But can he do it when you absolutely have to have it? That's the big question. That Donald wasn't just a great player. He was a great player when he had to be great. That's a whole nother thing. That's Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan kind of nonsense. And Aaron Donald was one of those guys. And until I see this team play without him for a week, a month, a season, I don't know if we're going to have a full understanding of just how much he was doing, even when he wasn't the one doing it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to give you that one. He's almost doing Patrick Mahomes-y like things on the defensive line that are literally flipping Super Bowls. I'll give you that one. But, I mean, we're talking – I want to point this out before we hit to the next segment. I mean, the subtractions as far as the players you left, Coleman Shelton, Carson Wentz, and Kella Witherspoon, Jordan Fuller, Jonah Williams, John Johnson, Troy Reader, Royce Freeman, Bryson Hopkins, Tremaine Aker. I mean, those are – I mean, in all due respect, those are a lot of replacement-level NFL players. Yes. And it just makes you have the conversation. Do you have a fully upgraded offensive line where you could still possibly a little outside chance you add a left tackle? 100%. Next level. You have Dotson at the beginning of the season, right? And then you look, do you have a better secondary? Yes. Can you improve the special teams? I think you will. So I think from top to bottom, you can. But the thing that really, my number one takeaway from this whole entire segment, what really makes us hurt is, damn, we could have had all this plus AD.
And
we're talking Super Bowl. You know?
Right. You could have had him and all of this other stuff. They're going to be good. They're going to be, I think they're going to be very, very interesting, fun to watch. I think that they're going to win some games. I think they can compete for a division title. I think that they're going to be right in the heart of the playoff mix. But it's really hard to wrap your head around the absence of that guy until you actually have to play without him.
Absolutely. AD, if you're watching, come on now.
Yeah, right.
Now. But coming up next, the Rams officially signed Tre-Davious White. He had some interesting comments. We're going to break it all down. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
All right, it's playoff time, just about, in both the NBA and the NHL, right? What else is going on? Well, I don't know. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every single game. And oh, by the way, the Masters is this week too, right? You want to get in on the Masters? All sorts of odds, golf odds, Masters odds on FanDuel as well. And right now, if you're a new customer, you get $150 in bonus bets. That's guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, golf, the Masters, right? Who doesn't love doing that? Me, I love doing that. All on an app that is safe, secure, and super easy to use. So really, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn, LOCKEDON. FanDuel.com/LockedOn, and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
And we are off running here on Locked On Rams. Thanks for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there. We appreciate you watching and listening to every single episode of Locked On Rams. And you can join that Everyday Listeners Club too. We're currently running a draft special right now. Membership is 100% free, and you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. Now, Travis, here in our second segment, the Rams, they announced the signing of Tre-Davious White, so it's officially official. And we don't know the exact base structure of the contract. What we do know about it, though, is the base is $8.5 million, and the incentives can bring it up to $10 million. It's on a one-year deal. I always say there's really no such thing as a bad one-year deal. And some nice things to say about his signing, and the Rams fans' message that is, I'm excited to get to work for you fans, get out there in the community with the fans and put my best foot forward with my teammates. I'm so excited to be here. Go Rams. Yeah, it was nothing burger. But but I still look back at this signing. I look at the potential. I mean, you're getting someone that when he's healthy, he gives you Pro Bowl level production. I think that where this team is, especially we talked about Aaron Donald, you kind of think of this as a one-year deal. Can you get done with this group, or do you kind of want to think long-term after this?
This is a great signing. I love this because the upside is enormous and the downside is very, very small. Tre-Davious White is a great player, not a good NFL player. He's a great NFL player. He takes the ball away. He does the one thing that the Rams really struggled with over the last year or so, and that's just taking the ball away from the other team. You know, not to be too cliched about this, but, you know, whoever wins the turnover battle wins the game. It's kind of true. And the Rams, you know, were almost always starting with a zero takeaway thing, and it was just a matter of whether or not they were going to give it away on offense a time or two. He's that guy. He just can't stay healthy. So if the Rams are betting on his health, if the Rams are betting on him being able to be on the field for, 15, 16, 17 games in the playoffs, then he's going to make plays. He always has made plays in the NFL. That's not the issue. The issue has always been the health. And if the opposite happens, if it doesn't work out, if he continues to struggle with his health, if he's continually unavailable to play, you're not on the hook for a long time. It's not like you took a big swing. So I really like this. I like guys on a prove it deal. I like guys that have to try to go get another contract, and they got to push themselves to go make sure that bag's waiting for them at the backside. I think this is nothing but upside. I'm not saying it's going to work necessarily, because if he's unhealthy, then none of this matters. But if it does work, it's going to work in a big way.
I 100% agree with you. When I learned of this signing, I said, you know what, this is the move they need to make, not just because you needed to upgrade the secondary, but you need to bring in a guy that's a true ball hawk, a guy that can turn the ball over. Last year, the Rams, 10 interceptions. That was bottom third of the league, fumbles as well. I mean, they weren't a team that turned you over and changed the game from that standpoint. And this is someone who has 18 career interceptions in just 82 games. He's forced 5 fumbles and recorded 3 sacks. I mean, when he's on the field, he's getting after and he's making things happen. And he's also just a zone cornerback. He's great instincts, great ball skills, a ball hawk. And that's what you want to see with this Rams. Yes, you can bring in a guy that can cover and try to do things like that. But this is someone who, when he's on the field, you're going to feel his impact.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that there's something else that kind of factors into this is you got a brand new DC. You got a brand new guy in Chris Shula who's stepping into this job for the first time. Now, he's been in the NFL forever and ever. He's been at the Rams for a very long time. So he's certainly familiar with the players and familiar with Sean McVay and the culture of the Rams team. That's all good news. But this is a new job for him. And I think the more veteran guys you have with a new coach, that tends to kind of balance each other out. That if I have a young guy, give me some veteran players. If I have a bunch of young players, then I need a more veteran defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, whatever it is. So I think that this kind of helps in that regard. It's a guy that's been in the league, a guy knows how to make plays, a guy that doesn't need to be coached up to such an extreme degree like maybe a younger player does.
Exactly, 100%. I see people out there, oh, this is a guy, he only played 10 games in the last 2 seasons. He's coming off an Achilles injury. It's a gamble. Guess what? That's why he came at that price.
Right.
If he's fully healthy, he's signing a big deal. They're not signing him. So this actually works out of their favor. I'm guessing that the Rams, like they do with all players, they're really great at doing their due diligence, especially when it comes to the medicals. And I'm sure they looked under the hood and they saw, okay, we have dealt with guys coming back off Achilles injuries. We've dealt with guys coming back off of serious injuries, and we know what to expect. And I think that's the case with White. They said, you know what? The upside is there, and we see the value in it. And Les Snead and company say, you know what? We need a game changer. We need to absolutely get a Pro Bowl level cornerback. And imagine basically a Kella Witherspoon last year, but like times like 10, 15, 20 based on his potential.
Well, that's it, right? The way this works out is he comes in, he plays in every game, he intercepts, he gets 7 or 8 picks, takes 1 or 2 to the house, and changes the way that the Rams play defense in their secondary. And he's healthy, and all of a sudden there's a line of people waiting to sign him at the end of the year, and the Rams go, "Thank you very much for your service, peace." Right. And that they use him for what he's able to do. He's able to use them for what he needs to rebuild his career, to rebuild his brand, and make sure that he can show the league that he can still play at a high level. And everybody moves on. He gets paid somewhere else, and the Rams get a really good player for a year. That's the perfect scenario.
Stay healthy and ball out, right? Yep. I mean, this is an all-pro. There's a big difference between an all-pro player and a Pro Bowl player, right? I mean, let's just be honest here. And I mean, he can absolutely help this team in a big way. But coming up next, will the Rams break this streak that they currently hold right now for the NFL draft? That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams. And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday, free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest sports stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, Travis, the Rams currently hold a record as far as the current streak for teams that have drafted their first pick in the draft on one side of the ball. So the longest active streaks, this is from Greg Allman, NFL analyst, who says the longest active NFL streaks putting a team's top draft pick on the same side of the ball. Offense, you got the Chargers, Steelers, and Rams and Falcons all have done it for 4 years. And then for defense, you have the Bucs, Packers, and Chiefs. So question is, do they stick to that side of the ball? Do you stick with offense? I feel like if you can get a franchise left tackle, for someone like available, like a Joe Aldo, Olu Fashanu, it's becoming increasingly unlikely. Or do you want to go get the playmaker? We talked about Brock Bowers. We talked about Rome Odunze, if those become available. But when you look at this team's needs, we just talked about the defense. It does feel like if they're going to stay where they're at, you're probably going to flip the script and possibly go on the defensive side of the ball this year.
Yeah, I think, again, this is, I am beating a dead horse here like you're not going to believe, and the everydayers know what's coming next. Take the guy you think's the best player. If that's an offensive player, take him. If that's a defensive player, take him. Don't get too cute with this. I think that what we're looking at here, because they're kind of in no man's land, right? That they're just close enough to where the first round talent is, but they're not in it, right? But they're not far enough back to where there's not a ton of advantage of moving along the way. I think what you're going to see them do is move out of that spot. I really do. Now, where their first pick is, like you're talking about, where they've taken all these offensive players over the last few years, it's kind of a mixed bag, right? That Avila, really nice pick. You look at a guy like Logan Bruss, not so much. You look at a guy like Tutu Atwell, not so much. And this is why when you look at these guys, like you look at the Les Snead first rounders in his era, it's 3-3-1. Like you got three really good players in Aaron Donald, Todd Gurley, and Jared Goff. There's no argument. Those were good picks. They worked out. They helped the Rams. One guy's in the Hall of Fame. Another guy's still a high-level NFL quarterback. And the other guy was an MVP candidate for a brief period of time. There are three misses, right? There's Tavon Austin, Alec Ogletree, and Greg Robinson. Those were nothing burgers at best and disasters in Robinson cases at worst. And then there's Michael Brockers, who's kind of somewhere in between those two things. That's 3-3-1. That's 500. That's picking high in the draft in the first round, low in the draft in the first round. So I don't know how anxious anybody is to take a swing at number 19 in a draft that's relatively low on first round talent. So I think you take the best guy. If it's an offensive guy in the street, keeps going, cool. If all of a sudden you decide to get an edge or you decide to go, off the board and take a corner, whatever it might be, I think you take the best player, and I don't think you worry about trying to fill a hole.
I agree. I think the Rams are too advanced of an organization to pigeonhole themselves into saying, oh, we're just not going to take the best defensive player because we lost Aaron Donald and we need an edge, right? They want to get the player with the best upside that they think they can help this team win. And if you have to overcompensate on the offensive side to supplement what the defense lacks, then you go that route. But, you haven't seen an offensive player – we haven't seen a defensive player taken since Taylor Rapp, right? Even after that, you had Cam Akers, didn't work out. You had Tutu Atwell, still hasn't worked out. Logan Bruss hasn't worked out, right? You haven't had a great track record with that first pick taken in the draft, and hopefully you kind of flip the script. Having said all that, man, this team needs an edge. Right, man, this team needs an edge, and you go out there, and if I've seen Latu slip in some of these mocks, of course, that really doesn't mean a damn thing when it comes to how these NFL organizations look at these players. And if you get an edge, it's tough to win in the NFL without production at that position. You could say, yeah, Byron Young could take another step in the right direction, still really raw. Michael Hoyt's back, but you definitely need to solidify that position. Had you had done it in free agency, then that's totally different, but they didn't do it in free agency. There's really not a lot of guys out there. Maybe they can go out there. I think you could see some draft day trades possibly, but I'm in 100% agreement with you. Go out there and get the best player. If they went out there and they did something splashy, like find a way to either trade up to get a Bowers or a Dunze, I'd be 100% all for that. That'd actually be my first choice, to go up there and get a playmaker on offense, or my first choice actually be a left tackle if you could get that, but right behind that would be wide receiver, tight end, and then you can see if you can fill that defensive position later.
Well, you know how I feel about this. I think there are four positions that you have to have right? It's the quarterback, it's the guy who protects the quarterback, left tackle, it's the guy who hits the quarterback, edge, right? And then it's the guy that catches the ball from the quarterback. Those are the four spots. And the one that they're missing the most right now is the guy that goes and hits the quarterback. So if there's a player that fits that need and you have him rated highly on your board, then that's the most obvious way to go. But, if, like you said, if there's one of those skill guys, if you think you can move from 19 and grab a Rome Odunze or grab a Bowers or Alt or one of those guys, then by all means go do it.
That's the move. That has to be the move. But hey, you know what? After the AD, let's get weird. Let's get crazy. Let's take some bold swings, some big risks. That's what I want to see from this team. I'm just excited to have a pick, man. We're actually going to celebrate this year and at least have something to work with. But that's the do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And of course, you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.